Hey guys, welcome back to Destin Reads Romance. I'm Destin and today I'm going to be doing a review on A Court of Silver Flames. I'm going to be including both spoiler-free and spoiler-free review talks, so I'll let you guys know once I get into like more detailed sections that I'm going to start spoiling a lot of what happens in here. But first I just kind of want to give my general thoughts about A Court of Silver Flames. I have a different perspective from a lot of people who have been loving Sarah J. Maas for years. I have not watched anybody's video on A Court of Silver Flames before I recorded this because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't influenced by anybody to kind of change my mind or change my opinion. I just kind of wanted to go into it with only my thoughts in my head while I reviewed this book, and I do have quite a bit to say, but I'm going to try to make this video as concise as possible. It's definitely not going to be as long as the vlogs that I did while I was reading Sarah J. Maas for the first time, A Court of Thorns and Roses, that whole series. That was long. That was long. This is not going to be that long, I promise. I have recently discovered Sarah J. Maas. I only read the series about 2.5 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago I completed it and I did my vlog on it. So this is my first time reading Sarah J. Maas, discovering her world. And it came right before this book released. I obviously fell in love with the series. I really enjoyed her writing, and that's why I pre-ordered A Court of Silver Flames. The actual physical book, this hardcover, did not come in on the day of release day, unfortunately. So I did end up by reading it on ebook, and it came in as I was finishing the last 10% of the book, this actual physical copy. I have said in my vlogs I'm not a fan of the recoverings. I understand the reason why they're recovering it, because they're rebranding it for adult romance. I don't know if it's specifically rebranded as adult romance or just in the broader sci-fi fantasy category, because it's in different sections in different bookstores in my area. But I don't like this branding. I don't like this, and this is my least favorite cover for the new hardbacks. Like, no. Don't like it. That being said, a lot of you guys really loved my covers that I got for the Court of Thorns and Roses series. I did get some specific special dust jackets that were available a couple years ago, and they're available again. So if you want the dust jackets that I have, they're for sale right now for pre-order. I'll include the link to the Bookish Box down below where you can pre-order the set of 4 covers for A Court of Thorns and Roses, A Court of Mist and Fury, A Court of Wings and Ruin, and A Court of Frost and Starlight. There's a separate link for the upcoming dust jacket that will be made and I think shipped in April for A Court of Silver Flame. So everyone will be matching. There's also another set that you can get by Illumicrate. I'll link that one down below as well because they're all beautiful art. And I might have gotten the Illumicrate box so that I can have those as well. So if you're disappointed in the coverings, there are some other options and you can go grab these, which I'm really happy that we have them. Really happy because I like my books to be matching. Plus, I'm not a fan of this art. I'm not gonna be able to hold this book the whole time. This book is thick, man. Whew. Okay, now that I've rested my arm, my wrist, I do want to mention that the map, which why are maps exciting? They're exciting to me. I've always loved looking at maps for fantasy romance, and this map for Prythian and the other fairy realms got a revamp for this book, and it's gorgeous. So here it is. I'm trying to get it all in frame. So I love it. I love how each little symbol in the 4 corners represents the seasonal courts, and then we have the, goodness. We have dawn, day, and then the moon up there for night court. So it's gorgeous. I love looking at this, and I would like a print of this, honestly. So, spoiler-free review and thoughts. I enjoyed a lot of this book, and I had trouble with some of this book. It's kind of like 50-50. There are some sections of this book that I'm just like perfection, absolutely love, and some sections of this book where I'm just like, I'm not vibing with this. I have a couple issues with character development. I have a couple issues with pacing, and also just kind of like, was this kind of necessary? Was this a necessary part of the story? Could it have been trimmed? Yes, it could have. So I'm going to generally describe what I liked about the book and what I didn't like about the book. I liked Cassian first and foremost. He was perfection. I don't have anything bad to say about Cassian. I loved his character. I loved the role that he played in this book. And there were times where I empathized with him a lot more than Nesta. She is a prickly, prickly, prickly cactus. And she's meant to be. This is her character. But what I had trouble with was how long she stayed in this very prickly stage where she would lash out at all the people that loved her. And I can sympathize and empathize with everything that Nessa is going through because I think that Sarah J. Maas does explore that a lot. It's pretty clear early on why she's doing the things that she does, but does it excuse the behavior? To a certain extent it does, but then the more we go on with her recognizing that she's doing these things, that she's hurting the people that she loves, the more I don't sympathize with her. And I'm just like, if you recognize a problem, let's make some moves to change things. Especially when she's like, I want to change. And I feel like that progress really doesn't happen because I feel like maybe we make some progress and it's really good in some situations, and then all of a sudden something happens where she falls back on her old ways. And I get how that can be realistic, but from a reader's perspective where you expect some character growth, I feel like Nesta didn't experience as much character growth in time for me to be like, now I really love her character and I love these scenes and I love witnessing her character growth, because it's not enough for her to grow at the very end of the book. For me, especially for a book this size. Editing Jessen popping in here to say that I forgot to mention something. That it was just one more reason why I think that I was not on board with Nesta after a certain point, because one of the things that she liked to say when Cassian or Farah or anybody says, I understand what you're going through, or I know what you're going through, her favorite comeback was, you have no idea what I'm going through. And it bothered me a little bit, because if you think about the people who she's actually saying this to, they are the largest group of people that would understand exactly what she's going through. There's someone that went through exactly what she did go through, Elaine. And some people that went through worse. I mean, I guess it's subjective whether or not you think it's worse or not, but the point is, this group of people have been through the ringer, and saying that my pain's bigger than your pain, I just don't love that. I don't love that. Reese, she loves to think of Reese as this like perfect man, and she's just like so annoyed by him, and I'm like, he has suffered. Farah has suffered, Cassian has suffered, Azrael has suffered. I'm just like, I don't understand where that whole I'm this lonely island and nobody understands me thing comes from. And that's one of the things that I was just like, Nesta, I understand your pain, but also I don't like the way that you're treating people. And I knew it was part of her character development. I just wanted some more progress. So back to what I was saying already. Some of the things that I really loved was, you can tell a lot of Nesta's problem is that she has a lot of history with her sisters and with her father. She's coming to grips with her father dying in the last book. So she is dealing with this by herself and pushing everybody else away. And she needs time and space to heal. They gave her that time and space, but she kind of squandered it. And it's almost like a dare. She's daring them. How far can I push you guys before you push me away, and then I can say, aha, I told you so. You guys don't love me and you're throwing me out, even though she's the one that caused all of it. And I get that self-destructive behavior. Like, I really do. I really get it. And they put their foot down and they're like, you're going to have to make some changes, or else we're going to dump you in the mortal realm and you can make your way there. You're now a fairy though, so you're not going to be welcome there. So either follow our directions, do what we want you to do, or you're thrown out of Prithian. So she has to stay. I'm trying to wait for my neighbor to be done cutting their grass. I hope they're almost done. But Reese and Farah tell her that she is going to be living at the House of Wind now, which is isolating because you can only get there by stairs, and there's 10,000 steps. And she has let herself go to an extent where she is extremely weak physically and mentally. And or you could have somebody winnow you there, or you can have somebody, well, and you need wings as well. You need the ability to winnow or have wings, or you have to subject yourself to 10,000 steps, which is insane and impossible for Nesta at this point. And this, isolating her in the House of Wind, doesn't give her access to any of the bars in Valaris anymore, so she can't do her self-destructive drinking and partying and sleeping with all kind of people. And it's hurting her soul. You can tell it's hurting her soul to do all of these things, and they're trying to give her a leg up to pull herself out of this hole that she's dug herself in. The second part of the deal is that she's going to train with the Illyrians at Windhaven. And so Cassian is in charge of Nesta, and he's going to be in charge of her training. One of my favorite parts of it is when Cassian does recognize that she is being stubborn because she refuses to train at Windhaven, but then he realizes Nesta is extremely prideful and does not want to fail in front of these hardened warriors who are already kind of a misogynistic society. I mean, they clip the wings of their females so that they no longer have the ability to fly. And one of these characters that Nesta befriends is Emery. Emery is an Illyrian that we meet in A Court of Frost and Starlight. Cassian does talk to her. Dogs, swear. So when Cassian does realize this, he's like, okay, we'll just train at the House of Wind. We can do the training there. And this is progress. I love to see this progress, and I like to see her develop a relationship with Emery and Gwen, who neither of them, Gwen is a priestess, by the way, because she also has to work in the libraries with the priestesses. And the reason why she's able to develop a relationship, a normal, healthy relationship with Emery and Gwen, is because they don't know her past. And you can tell that she is ashamed of her past. She's ashamed of how she acted with Farah when they were just mortals. She's ashamed of how she treated her father. She's ashamed about a lot of it. But Emery and Gwen don't have that vision of Nesta. So they're able to just like her for who she is, and she really needs that type of thing. While I really like that, I feel like one of her main conflicts was this very strained relationship that Nesta has with Farah, which kind of got better in A Court of Wings and Ruin, and then we backtracked a lot in A Court of Frost and Starlight, and now she had a good relationship with Elaine, but now she does not, because Elaine does not. She's the fine one now. Elaine is the one that's kind of fine. She's a little bit too fine if you ask me. And that was a huge conflict in A Court of Frost and Starlight and in this book as well. And I feel like we don't spend hardly any time really getting to the bottom of that and seeing some progress in their relationship. So I was a little disappointed in that. There's some amazing scenes in here that I really enjoyed. Again, I've talked about this. She does horror scenes really well. There's some cool scenes in the bog that I'll talk about in my spoiler section. But the main conflict toward the end didn't work for me because the blood right of Windhaven kind of comes into play, but there's also this side kind of mission to do with Eris, and that part held no interest to me, and I was skimming all those scenes. I was like, I see the twist that we're trying to create. I don't believe it. To me, this is pointless. Just don't have any of these scenes at the end. And so, yeah. I don't even know if I could say that I liked half the book. I probably liked a third of the book, and I had trouble for one reason or another with 2/3 of the book. And some of that has to do with too many scenes that could have been cut, and also just general character plot progression. So now I'm going to talk spoilers because there's a lot of spoilery scenes that I want to talk about and go into great detail, and I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. So now we're in the spoiler section. Okay, I'm also going to put this book down because my thumb hurts. So I think we've already soundly established that I had trouble with Nesta's character, and I think what made it a problem for me, because I'm okay with reading characters who need like a serious attitude change and an overhaul because of something that they experience, like I can understand them, but knowing that the whole point of this book is for them to get better is what pushes me through, and what's like, yes, you're doing some bad things, but it's okay because you're going to get better and you're going to apologize for all the bad things that you've done. For Nesta, I feel like we spend a lot of time showing how broken she is. And in some ways, I liked some of the things that were shown, but in other ways, I felt like it dragged on too long because though they have experienced extremely different things. This was a similar type of scenario to when Farah was in a deep depression in A Court of Mist and Fury. And while I feel like the time that was spent dedicated to Farah's healing, I felt like that was well spent, and I felt like the progression of healing that she experienced was well paced for Farah's part. For Nesta's part, I feel like it was very slow going, and I was just kind of like getting a little frustrated and being like, how far into this book do I have to get before I feel like we're at a turning point? And I think I was at about 50% of the book, and that's a lot of book. That's a whole length novel. I have books that are this length, that are this long, an entire book. So it felt too long. It felt too long for Nesta to start to get to the program, to get with the program. There was other things happening besides Nesta's inner conflict that were very interesting, and that held a lot of my interest through her progressing. And if that wasn't interesting, then this book would have been in trouble for me. So we find out that there's these 3 items called like the Trove, and they're pretty much objects of power. And the Mortal Queen, who at the end of A Court of Mist and Fury was put into the cauldron and came out an old crone with immortal life, but she looked old. She is the only one that's kind of left on the drawing board at this point. We don't really know what the other queens are doing at this time, and they have to find these Trove objects before that queen does. Nesta, since she is cauldron maid, can sense these types of objects, and so it's kind of like a quest. We need to find the 3 things. We need to find the crown, the mask, and the harp. Absolutely fascinating. I love these scenes. One of my favorite scenes in the entire book is when Cassie and Azriel and Nesta go to the bog, which is an area like under the mountain, like near under the mountain, that kind of middle ground area. And it's like, these are where the nastiest creatures are dumped, live here unchecked. And there's some really horrendous creatures, like creatures from your nightmares here. So while Azriel and Cassian are fighting these soldiers, which are like some missing soldiers that Eris tells them about, Nesta is left in a tree, but she grows worried. She's worried for Cassian. And she decides to get down from the tree, even though she was specifically told not to, because she's like, what if they're dead or dying? I need to go find them. It's been too long. Like, I can't just sit in a tree. So she gets down, and a Kelpie comes out of this black lake, and it is the scariest thing ever. I was like, oh my God, I'm so scared right now. I used to have like a kind of like a phobia to do with these above ground hot tubs, and it kind of reminded me of that. I used to think that dead things were in there as a child, so it like brought up those kind of memories for me. And there's this extremely horrendous looking Kelpie who's like this death creature that grabs her and pulls her underwater, and I'm just like, this is part of like one of my worst nightmares. So it was horrendous for me. She comes very close to dying, but she's able to sense the mask, and she actually puts on the mask. And since the mask is kind of this death object, and Nesta took like this kind of death power from the cauldron, they're one and the same, and she's able to wear the mask and the mask not take control of her, and so she's able to kill the Kelpie. And the scene where Cassian goes back to the tree, finds out that she's not there, and he sees her come up from this lake, like drenched and like holding the head of a Kelpie. It was just so amazing. I was like, yes, this writing's really damn good. Really damn good. So all those scenes that I really, really loved, I felt that way about them. I felt like, wow, blown away. This is really good writing. I was so immersed in the scene that I was feeling like scared, excited, you know, swooning, whatever. And there was many good scenes like that. Another one of those is when they go to the Hewn City. They go to the night court. Nesta is set on this quest to kind of seduce Eris, which I never really got it, and it never really played out. It was kind of a drop storyline. There was no purpose to her doing this, except it gave us a scene where Cassian was slightly jealous. Nesta is like a known dancer. She loves music. Cassian knows this, and after this night, and after he cuts in to dance with her, we get his point of view, and we find out that he secretly asked Moore to help him learn the dances so that he can dance with Nesta. And I'm just like, this is why I love Cassian. He just like, I don't think he even ever tells her. He doesn't ever tell Nesta that he learned how to dance. He just quietly did that because he wants to be able to, you know, do the things that she likes, and she wants to make, I don't want to say make himself better for her, but he does have slight insecurities to do with like being a bastard Illyrian and stuff like that, being told a lot of that, and he sees Nesta as this beautiful woman who everyone desires her, especially in that scene where she is seducing Eris, and he's like, oh my god, she can have a prince if she wants, type of thing. But oh my god, Cassian, I love him so much. And the gift that he gives her, it's perfect. So they have another winter solstice scene, and also very cute that Azriel gives her that kind of like fae book reading light. I loved it. That was adorable. But Cassian quietly gives Nesta his own gift, and it's this orb that plays music. And she was like, well, how did you, oh, you must have recorded it that night. And how did you get all the background noise not recorded? It's not here. It's like, oh, I had to go back and the next morning and I asked the orchestra to play those songs again and add in some of their favorites. So like, he's just so thoughtful, guys. He is so freaking thoughtful. I loved him. But of course, every single one of these cute scenes with Cassian is followed by Nesta like lashing out at him, which made me dislike Nesta a little bit because I love Cassian so much, and I'm just like, it's time for you to progress, girlfriend. It's time for you to get over yourself. It's time for you to like be strong mentally. You're strong physically now, and like now you need to kind of get over yourself. So that's how I was feeling during that scene. But let's go back to stuff that I liked. I already said that I really liked that she found a friend in both Emery and Gwen. I enjoyed that aspect. I think she really needed that kind of separation from her family. I think she still needed to have some time to like sit down with Farah and apologize to her, because she has one moment where she kind of talks mind to mind, and it was an accidental apology because she like apologizes to Farah in her mind. I'll go back to the scene in a minute, but she apologizes in her mind, and then Farah's like, I forgive you, and Nesta's like, oh, I forgot she could read minds. So it was an accidental apology. She didn't even mean to apologize, and I'm just like, it's not enough for me. I need her to apologize to Farah more. I really liked the whole Valkyrie things. So Gwen is a priestess, and her superior is researching Valkyries. And once Nesta finds out about this, she's like, we should be Valkyries. Like, these were actual people who used to fight, and they could fight side by side with Illyrians, and like they were just as good as Illyrians. Illyrians didn't really love that. And Cassian knew some Valkyries before they were wiped out. And so once she gets Emery and Gwen to train with her, that's kind of their goal. Like, we're going to use their practices to calm the mind, and we're also, this is what we're going to kind of rebuild this society. And I really like that aspect of it. I really, really did. I love that Cassian and Azriel made them an obstacle course, and it ended up by being the blood right obstacle course. Like, you needed to qualify to be in the blood right. So that was really, really, really cool. Oh, another one of my favorite things about this book was Nesta's relationship to the house of wind. So what started off as her prison ended up by being her friend, since the house is sort of sentient. And there was a conversation that implies that Nesta kind of made the house even more sentient, because her greatest wish was to have a friend when she was at the house, whenever she first arrived there. And it really does give a glimpse into how lonely she feels. Even though it's a self-imposed loneliness, it doesn't matter. She wished for a friend, and the house became her friend. I love how it really wanted to comfort Nesta when she was feeling down. She can't light a fire because the crackling of logs reminds her of when her father's neck was snapped. Very morbid. So when the house lights a fire in her room and she says, turn it off, but she's freezing, the house finds a way to just warm the air in the room and like keep her bed itself warm. And it's just like, it's a beautiful relationship. I love the house. And the house, like when they have their girls' nights, they had a girls' night scene where Gwen and Emery come over, and they're like, wow, your house is magic and it gives us whatever we want. And they like ask for like extravagant things, and like the house was having fun with it too. and also introduces them to romance novels. That's a big thing with Nesta's character, is that she liked to read smutty books, and Cassian liked to tease her about it. So I loved all of that. It was beautiful, really good. So besides Nesta's character progression not being enough for me, because I'll let you guys know, when I started to really lose hope after Nesta lashed out at Farah, after finding out that they weren't going to tell her that she created these swords of power, like these incredibly magic swords that nobody has seen in centuries and centuries, millennia even. They took a vote. Cassie and Azrael and Farah voted to tell her, but Rhys and Amren voted against her. But she was also just mad that it was up for debate whether or not to tell her at all. So she has some righteous anger, and she decides to lash out by, and this is another plot point, which there's a reason why I don't really talk about it. This was not a favorite point of this book. She lashes out at Farah, who was on her side, by informing Farah, who is pregnant, that, hey, you're probably going to die in childbirth, and your husband is keeping this from you. Because the thing is, Nesta can't stand that Farah has found happiness, and she resents Rhys for this fact as well. And so she kind of enjoys making them unhappy. And it's sad to say, but that's what she does enjoy that. She does enjoy that. She immediately regrets it, but it doesn't matter. The damage is done. And Rhys is kind of like, get her out of here because I'm going to kill her. And Cassian brings her to hike on this mountain because he knows that she needs time for herself, knows that she's beating herself up inside. Does not excuse that this is what she always does, is lash out, and it always comes back to bite her in the ass. All she's doing is hurting people who are trying to help her and trying to show her that they care and that they love her. And she is realizing this as she's climbing the mountain. And they finally get to the top, and she has this moment where she just like crashes to the ground, and like it's a very cathartic moment for her. She just sobs and she spills to Cassian like, I can't believe that I'm still like this. I hate being like this. I don't want to do this. I hate myself. And I'm just like, this is the epiphany moment. Yay! And I'm like, we're gonna try to be better, aren't we, Nesta? No. She still lashes out, especially to Cassian. We don't receive enough progress after the scene where I thought that this should be the scene where we are on an upward trend. That does not mean that she wouldn't have doubts or weak moments, but I wanted her to like think before she lashed out in the future. I wanted her to think about it first, and she never does, and she still lashes out, and very frustrating for me. There's also a scene where she goes back to her home, where it all started, where Tamlin had broken in, and she looks at the bed and she realizes that even though she thought her father was weak, and she never did a day go by where she wasn't quick to remind him that she thought he was just like a pathetic excuse for a human, and she realizes in this home that she was unfair to her dad, and her dad still loved her unconditionally even though she was so horrible to him. And she also says in the scene, I need to stop treating people like this. And then she is given opportunities to make a good decision, and she makes a bad decision by lashing out at people. And I'm just like, especially in the scene where Cassian confesses that he's in love with her and they're mates. And she's just like, I don't deserve you. And I'm like, I think we should have made some progress from, hesitancy about having a mate and still having a little bit of doubts, but she's still stuck in the place where she feels like she doesn't deserve anything because she thinks she's a horrible person, which is where we were in the very beginning of the book. So I needed her to be better, a lot better by this scene. And I was extremely frustrated. And of course, she regrets it. She always regrets it right after. But now I don't care anymore. Now I'm just like, you should know better at this point. But then she's kidnapped by the Illyrians and thrust into the Blood Rite. And nobody can take her out because it's a rule of the Blood Rites that nobody can interfere with the Blood Rites. Even though rules are broken during this Blood Rite and nobody cares about it. So now Cassian is stuck twiddling his thumbs because he cannot go in to go help Nesta and Emery and Gwen, who have all been thrust into this Blood Rites. So now we have the side quest. The side quest where it's like, Eris has been captured. We have to go spy on the Mortal Queen and see if we can rescue Eris. So there's lots of scenes that go in between all of the scenes of the Blood Rites where Cassie and Azriel are just staking out the Mortal Queen's realm, waiting for Eris to pop out. I skimmed everything. I was just like, boring, don't care. They're waiting for Eris. Then they see Eris and they're like, oh no, he must not be under her thrall because look, he still has his dagger. So now he's working with the queen. I knew we shouldn't have trusted Eris. And I'm like, red herring. He's captured. Eris is a good guy. We all know Eris is a good guy. It's a setup. Eris is probably going to get his own book. So I'm just like, I don't care. I don't care about this. And guess what? It turns out that, yeah, the queen definitely had Eris in her thrall. And at the very end of the blood rite, like now there comes a point where it's okay for Cassian to winnow in. So he and the Mortal Queen appear on the mountain where Nesta is going toe-to-toe with this guy, Emery's cousin, who's a terrible person, terrible human being. And once Cassian is like hurt, she finally snaps out of it and finally can recognize that Cassian's her mate. And then she goes all like, which was a cool scene, she goes all death queen and unmakes the queen. That was really cool. I did enjoy that, but the impact was a little bit less because I was like, oh, now you're okay with Cassian being your mate, even though he's been like the most amazing man ever throughout this entire series and this book. About time you get on my level, Nesta. And then finally, the scene that I both love and hate. So, like I said before, Farah is pregnant, and there's this whole conflict where the explanation is when Farah summons her wings, her Illyrian wings, she actually changes her entire body to have the anatomy of an Illyrian, which Illyrians, since they're babies, have wings inside the womb, have a specific shaped birth canal. And so it was okay because she like shapeshifted out of her Illyrian form after she got pregnant. The healer says we don't know what shape-shifting will do to the baby, so don't do it. So there's one avenue that is blocked, even though I don't understand why some part of shape-shifting is not on the table, because Farah has demonstrated that she is able to shapeshift parts of her body. She can shapeshift claws like Tamlin does, partial shapeshift. She doesn't shapeshift her entire body into a wolf like Tamlin does, or whatever animal he is. She only does the claws. So why can she not shapeshift the Illyrian birth canal and just that, and not mess with her uterus or any of that? Like, not disturb the baby, just disturb the opening and like shapeshift that. Just wondering why that wasn't an option. But that's just me being picky at this point because I didn't like this storyline that Farah could potentially die. Do we think that she's gonna die? No. So I'm not worried about that, which makes this a tad bit of a boring storyline for me. It does give us a really nice moment when Farah does like really kind of die, and Nesta puts on all of the Trove items, the crown, the harp. She holds the harp in her hand and she's wearing the mask, and she plucks the 26th string on the harp, which makes her like a master of time and death. And she basically pours her essence, the essence that she took from the cauldron. She's like, I'll do anything if you save her and save the baby, which they later named Nyx because Nyx is premature. And so they're like, please give life vitality to Farah and give it to Nyx. And so she has this wonderful sister moment where she sacrifices for Farah, where it's always been Farah sacrificing for her. I was never worried for Farah's life. I knew that she was always going to survive. So the moment was a little bit just not as moving as it could have been for me if I felt like Farah was ever in any real danger. Now, there is still, I don't know how you really say his name. I want to say like Koshe, but it's probably not how you pronounce it. But he is a villain that was mentioned, and he's the guy that had one of the mortal queens trapped in like a swan princess type of storytelling, fairy tale retelling. Koshe is actually part of Russian folklore. I've run across the name a couple times. I don't really know that story very well at all, so I don't know if his story actually plays into a swan princess like of fairy tale. I have no idea, but he seems like he's set up to be a major villain, where in this book the mortal queen, which I already forgot her name, was a weak villain. And I almost wish that SJM would have went with more of an Illyrian uprising storyline, which she sort of teased in A Court of Frost and Starlight. But I think within this first chapter of this book, or the second chapter, she just kind of like Cassian rooted out who was kind of whispering and causing dissent in the ranks and took care of him. And then now everything's pretty much fine with the Illyrians. They're still like, you know, grumbly, rumbly, misogynistic beings that they need to change their society, but they weren't the main antagonists, and I wish that it was. I think that maybe a smaller, like, these people aren't evil, it's just like there's change that needs to be made in the Illyrians could have been a better fitting storyline for this book, focusing on that and not on the queen themselves, because the Trove items are really cool, but now we don't have Nesta who can wield them anymore. So what are we gonna do against Koschei? I don't know. It'll definitely make him harder to kill. Well, will it? Because we have the swords now. We have the sword that killed that being in the prison. What is his name? Lanthus? No, probably not. You know who I'm talking about, though. If you've read it, you know. That person was killed very easily by the sword that Nesta made. So yeah, maybe Koschei won't be a very hard villain to beat at all. I don't know. I don't really love all-powerful magical weapons because it makes it a little bit easy to defeat the villains that way. But we'll see how it plays out. We'll see how it plays out. I have no idea what direction SJM's going to go with the story. I don't know what couple she's going to focus on next. There possibly could be Moore or Azrael or Lucian. Eris. There's so many directions we could go. There is so many directions we can go. Yeah, so I stand by my rating of 3.5 stars, but when I'm officially rating it, it's going to be bumped up to 4 stars and not bumped down to 3 stars. Yeah, so that is my review of A Court of Silver Flames. I cannot wait to get my new dust jacket because I don't like looking at this gray and orange. It just does not give good vibes. And I can't wait to see what the dust jacket's going to look like for A Court of Silver Flames for both Illumicrate and for the Bookish Box. Like, cannot wait. Guys, I want to know what you thought of the book and of Nesta. I know that some people really love Nesta's journey and really liked how frustrating she was. I just don't. I like a certain level of frustration with my characters, but then there's a threshold that I pass and then I'm like, it's no longer enjoyable for me. So that's just what happened in this book. But I still, Cassian, he's worth the read. 100%, he has all the stars. He bumps it up to a 4-star on official ratings. That's what he does. He definitely just steals all scenes. I love him. Alright guys, if you like this video, give it a big thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed to my channel, make sure that you subscribe to get notified of any future videos that I do. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, life's better with little HEA. Bye guys.